We are good to go, Sam. Everything looks good. Yeah, letting people in now. Rachel will start in just a second. Hello, Pat.
Hey there.
All right, I think we're ready to go. Rachel, do you want to get started?
Sure. Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Rachel Paul with IAAP. Thank you for joining us today for the M-Enabling Virtual Leadership Briefing. Before we get started, just a few items to go over. We do have closed captioning provided. You can select the closed captioning icon at the bottom of your screen. And we are offering today live stream captions available in Spanish, German, Swedish, and French. And those links will be posted in the chat. And today's session will be recorded and available afterwards. And we also have ASL interpreters today. And please leave any questions in the Q&A, and if time permits, we will get to those during one of the sessions today. And the chat will be monitored for any general dialogue or technical issues. So I'm happy to turn today's program over to IAAP's Managing Director, Christopher Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. We have such an amazing group of individuals that are with us today, presenters as well as participants. We have, my name is Christopher Lee, and we have 48 countries represented today the last time we checked. The participants are from all over the place in the sense of what their roles are. We've got higher education, obviously, as we focused on the higher education universities at the forefront of digital inclusion is the title of this. We've got marketing, we've got aerospace folks joining us, we've got defense, banking, financial services, consulting, telecommunications, software, as well as legal and medical. We've got it all today here. So anyway, I'm the event coordinator and I will be leading you through today's 2-hour event. We'll get into the agenda in just a second, but we do have a break planned. And we also have a poll that is embedded into the presentation today. We've got 2 panels. We've got a keynote speech. We've got a little bit of data to share with you regarding the survey that we did. So it's really exciting. We've got some good stuff planned. So stay with us and enjoy it. I want to now introduce Excel LeBlanc. He is the president and executive director of G3 ICT. Excel, welcome to the floor.
Thank you, Christopher. And on behalf of G3 ICT, the Global Initiative for Inclusive ICTs, I welcome you all. It's a wonderful opportunity. To sum up what we see today is really exceptional, extraordinary trends for an extraordinary time. Prior to the meeting today, we sent you a little survey to find out what were your thoughts about what's going on in digital accessibility in universities and what is to be expected for the next 10 years. So I would like briefly to show you those results because they are a good introduction to the different discussion that will be held today during the webinar. So the first question we asked you was, do you see the shift towards virtual campuses being more digitally inclusive and favorable for students, faculty, and staff with disabilities? And here, about 55% of you said, yes, it's favorable. So it means that a slight majority of you see that it's definitely something that's kind of potentially positive. About 30% said, we're not sure yet, at least. And 14% said, no, it's unfavorable. So with that question in mind, we went to the second question, which is, has there been an acceleration of digital accessibility of campus classroom environments during the COVID-19 pandemic? And that was super encouraging in a way because we see that 59% of you said yes, there has been such an acceleration. 30% said not sure. That may be because quite a bit of our respondents may not be in academia, so I guess. And then 10.7% said no. But it looks to us that the vast majority of folks feel like 59% feel like, yeah, there was an acceleration of the digital accessibility environments during the pandemic. So that's really a positive trend. So COVID, in a way, has been an enabler of accelerating the trends for better service. Then the next question we asked you was even more telling. How do you see the awareness and demand for accessibility changing for campuses over the next 10 years? And here, an overwhelming 93% said increasing. So that is like an extraordinary piece of information that there is a clear collective consensus that the next 10 years will be extraordinarily important for students, faculty, and staff with disabilities in terms of accessing digital content services and products. So the following question, of course, is if that's the case, how do we best address this in the academic environment? And so we asked you 3 independent questions where we asked you to rank the importance of the opportunity of each of those 3 items. So the big winner was definitely, okay, the best way for academic to advance digital accessibility on campus is to embed accessibility in the classroom. It's kind of a self-evident in a way, but on the other hand, it's important to see how that is comparable to the number of persons or percentages we said, including digital syllabus or offering courses on digital accessibility, came up as the top priority in 40% of the responses. Publication on digital accessibility came up as 20%. So today's agenda is going to really focus on the first 2, embedding accessibility in the classroom. What are the strategies for digital accessibility in the classroom and on campus? And the second panel will be how to include digital inclusion in the syllabus or offering courses. So to quickly oversee the agenda, the opening remarks will come up first, but it will be followed by the global voices from academia, from 15 different countries on a very specific topic of how AI and machine learning will impact digital accessibility, which is really the big unknown and most exciting technology trend we can think of for accessibility. The second thing is inclusion strategies in a fast technology environment will cover the issue of implementing the digital accessibility in the classroom. Then we'll have an interview with Laura Allen, who is the head of strategy, accessibility, and disability inclusion at Google. And Laura has played a very significant role at Google to promote digital accessibility in all kinds of directions, but also on a more philanthropic way, contributing enormously to the launch of the Teach Access initiative to bring digital accessibility curriculum at university level. And that will be the topic of the last panel, mainstreaming accessibility principle and knowledge in curricula. So with that, we really hope that this webinar will bring you a lot of the responses to those issues that you see as top priorities for the next few years and even today. But let me first introduce to you the opening remark speaker, the keynote speaker for this session today. Deepti Samant-Raja is with the World Bank Global Disability Inclusion Team. She is there and oversees the implementation of very key programs, one on disability inclusive education in Africa, which is a huge program that targets the education in Africa, but also she oversees the inclusive education initiative. That means accelerating disability inclusive investment in education in general across the bank. And she also provides a lot of guidance and technical expertise to World Bank teams that address the needs of persons with disabilities through different types of projects. So it's including education. So a real interesting perspective to hear about. And then prior to do this, Deepti was director of international program and senior researcher at the Burton Blatt Institute at Syracuse University. She was also for a few years senior research analyst at G3ICT, and we remember fondly of her collaboration with all of us. And I'm very pleased to see her today. She also was before that research coordinator for the Global Partnership for Disability and Development. Dipti holds a Master of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and a Master of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of California, Irvine. Dipti, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Axel, and thank you to G3ICT for inviting the World Bank and me to speak at today's virtual leadership briefing on universities at the forefront of digital inclusion. There is no denying that the proliferation of digital technologies offers a significant opportunity to advance educational participation for students with disabilities across learning environments. In addition, the digital data revolution and its implications for data-driven services through machine learning, AI, and smart technologies are changing how persons with disabilities interact with their surroundings. Digital solutions are radically and rapidly changing how teaching can be differentiated and customized, how content can be adapted to meet a student's needs and preferences. Higher education is the bridge to work and income generation. And so it is essential that students across the spectrum of disabilities not only access and enroll in institutions of higher learning, but thrive and are ready to excel in the world beyond, which indeed puts universities at the forefront of digital inclusion to ensure that technology becomes an asset, a catalyst to inclusion, and an equalizer, and not a new source of inequities. We cannot have this conversation without recognizing the role of technology in education this past year. As my colleagues at the World Bank's Education Global Practice point out, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a stress test for education systems globally. Now, there have been inspiring examples of how suites of technologies, low-tech and high-tech, were put into play to minimize the disruptions that students faced in their access to education. At the same time, there have also been many reality checks, particularly in the countries the World Bank works to support, where the lack of robust digital infrastructures or existing edtech frameworks, or the lack of stakeholder knowledge and digital content meant that many students with disabilities faced gaps in their learning. So we believe that as we continue to invest in currently needed solutions, we use these lessons to inform the environments of the future and ensure that they reach every student and can withstand the types of shocks we saw during the pandemic. I would like to share a few emerging lessons from our work at the World Bank to support technology use for students with disabilities. First, students face challenges to quality learning at a systems level, but we find that solutions for students with disabilities remain narrowly focused. So interventions for students with disabilities still remain focused on providing assistive technology based on the type of disability, but they fail to pay equal attention to the broader ecosystem, including using the potential of technology to adapt the way students are taught or supporting curriculum adaptation. We have to design systems to be at scale. And to do that, there needs to be a proactive engagement of all possible end users and stakeholders throughout the development and implementation cycle. So this, of course, includes students with disabilities, but also includes teachers, administrators, parents and caregivers, organizations of persons with disabilities, to make sure that we really understand all the needs and contexts, including those related to intersecting needs of students with disabilities, so intersecting with gender, with linguistic diversity, with location. We must invest in the human components of the education technology ecosystem. So the role and capacity of teachers and professors to make or break the success of EdTech cannot be emphasized enough. We must try to ensure that these systems can work in difficult settings, that they can work when students do not have access to high bandwidth, and that they are flexible and resilient to continue to innovate during emergencies such as the COVID-19 pandemic. So I am as excited as each of you to learn today from exemplary leaders from around the world who are innovating and revolutionizing higher education in terms of digital inclusion. I hope the lessons we hear today and we take from today help us to ensure that digital solutions at universities accelerate successful outcomes for students with disabilities and do not become a new source of inequities. Thank you and enjoy all the remarks.
Diti, this is Christopher. Thank you so much for your remarks. Specifically your points about, integrating AT into the ecosystem and not just focusing it on just AT as an accommodation. Well said, and we're so glad that we have the World Bank as part of this presentation day. So thank you very much. Okay, our next segment of the presentation is to focus on getting the pulse of what's going on, some thoughts around the globe, to a question that we posed. And the question is, how do you see AI machine learning impacting higher education in areas of digital inclusion over the next 10 years? So how are we going to do this? We're going to bring on our global panel of academias across the world, and I'd like for them to put the cameras on if they don't have it on. And what we're going to do is we're going to give each of the panelists a minute to answer this question, introduce themselves and answer them questions. I'm going to read off a list of who we have here, which countries we have here. And the first country, and we can take down the slide now. The first country is Canada. Judah, would you like to come on and tell us a little bit about you briefly and the answer to the question?
Thank you. I'm Jutta Tobranos, and I'm the director and professor of the Inclusive Design Research Center at OCAD University. And we have modeled AI after human intelligence, meaning current AI also automates and amplifies our biases and accelerates human disparities. Like human decision processes, AI automated decisions and optimization ignore human diversity and contextual complexity. AI, therefore, will compel us to rethink our understanding of evidence and the role of statistical probability. This will lead to a transformation of favored research methods, research ethics, notions of quality, and student grading and ranking. The replacement of formulaic jobs by automation will compel us to support students to differentiate themselves rather than conform to standards, and to view education as lifelong. Students and educators currently at the margins will lead this rethinking.
Great, thank you, Canada. So we have Chile coming up. Christine?
Hi, everybody. I am Christine from Chile. I am the head of Universal Accessibility Diploma in the Catholic University of Chile. And I think about this question that here in Latin America is a huge gap between students with disability and other students, because the access to education is expensive to people with disability. And for that, the artificial intelligence is an advantage, a good tool, a very indispensable tool, because make cheaper the access to education. They can reach the education by a transport, even though it's in the same home, they can learn all the graduated and postgraduate topics.
Thank you, Chile. Okay, so Czech Republic, Radek. Thank you, Christine.
Hello, good morning. My name is Radek Pavlíček, and I am a certified professional in web accessibility project coordinator and event manager at the Teresia Center of Masaryk University. What we currently face is the constantly growing interest regarding all kinds of accessibility services. On the one hand, it's of course very positive, but on the other, human and other sources are limited. To provide accessibility services to all who ask for them, artificial intelligence and machine learning could help us in all spheres where their output is sufficient for addressing accessibility requirements, starting with automatic captioning, image description, or built-in accessibility features of authoring tools. And human resources can be focused on tasks where they are more efficient than what AI and machine learning are capable of.
Thank you, Radek. Okay, India, Dispendale.
Hi, this is Deependra Manocha, Director, Developing Countries Program with DAISY Consortium, and I'm also a partner and a mentor with the Assistic Lab at Indian Institute of Technology in New Delhi, India. For me, I think the biggest hope is with the work of AI in languages sphere, especially when I come from a country with 22 official languages and also the sign language. And within the language frame, there are a few very important components. For example, the OCRs, availability of OCR in all languages. And we have seen a big amount of detailed work happening in past few years with almost 250 languages OCR available with Google, for example. But the dream is that in next 10 years, we should have this OCR facility in almost every language of especially the low-income group countries. And also the capability of the OCRs enhancing to also work in the area of semantics, adding semantic information in the digital text. So currently all that semantic information most of the time is being put in manually. And I would really hope that the AI takes over and is able to analyze the text and put in the semantic information and is able to identify what is the heading, what is the table, and so on and so forth, and also able to get into the area of image descriptions or identifying the STEM education components, etc., and making this digital text more meaningful for the assistive technologies for persons with disabilities. The another area where huge gaps.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry to cut you off. We only have a minute for each. And we want to hear from Japan. So Masahiro, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you. Hi. Hi, good day, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Masahito Kawamori. I'm a project professor from Keio University, and also I'm the rapporteur of accessibility at the International Telecommunication Union. And one of our work items is on artificial intelligence for persons with disabilities. And I would like to emphasize that for classrooms and also higher education, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning will have a big impact in the decade to come, especially in the automatic speech recognition, which can be used for captioning, providing information to deaf and hard of hearing people, as well as graphics and image processing, which will enable object recognition as well as object description for visually impaired people. That said, we can also explore the possibilities of a hybrid approach to artificial intelligence with human help that would enhance the usability and also the practicality of the application in artificial intelligence in classrooms. So that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Norway, Anthony.
Hi, everybody. This is Anthony. I'm an associate professor here at Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway. I also run 7 startups in 4 different countries, which keeps me up at night a little bit. In Norway, we believe that promoting a diverse workforce can actively contribute to more inclusively designed AI and machine learning solutions. So the main impact we're looking at here is how we can challenge ourselves to expand the diversity of that workforce. This means we have to really think critically about the power skills that our graduates acquire and how those skills can empower underrepresented groups in the labor market. It also means that we are committed to continuing the transformation of our educational systems and challenging ourselves to give students across the spectrum of human diversity, not just a feeling of being included, but a feeling of belonging. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those comments. Russian Federation, Mikhail.
It's my pleasure to greet you all. Hello, my name is Mikhail Mozgovoy. I am Deputy Director of the Head Training Research and Methodological Center for Vocational Rehabilitation at Bauman Moscow State Technical University in Russia. And on the one hand, we see great potential for AI and machine learning to provide real adaptive learning individual adjustment of the educational environment, and most importantly, to move from solving sensory barriers to solving cognitive barriers. On the other hand, I personally have concerns that the gap between the most advanced universities in this regard can only grow wider. That is why, especially now, such international cooperation and platforms like M-Enabling are more important than ever. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Do we have South Africa that can come on the screen?
Yes,
oh, there you are. See you.
Hello.
Welcome.
I'm Marcia Kleiner-Cleophas from the Stellenbosch University in South Africa, the head of the disability unit. And for me, the vision is really looking at universal access. So how can we make material environments, our information accessible to more people than not? So including people with disabilities. So whether you are blind, whether you are deaf, whether you're struggling with dyslexia, whether you don't have a hand that works, how can our devices become such that it is completely accessible to everyone? Already we do have devices which convert speech to text and text to speech and so on, but people using, artificial limbs or cochlear implants, the world that we want to see is where everything can actually be so accessible that we level the playing fields. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Spain, Alejandro, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Alejandro Rodríguez Ascaso. I'm a lecturer and researcher at the Spanish National Distance Learning University, UNED. No matter how technology evolves, digital inclusion will always imply that technology adapts to our personal needs, preferences, and context. I think that AI will support personalized interaction of students and staff with university services, wherever we are. UNED has more than 200,000 students, including more than 8,000 students with disabilities. Big universities like mine will require effective and robust data models for users and resources, learning design patterns where functional diversity and personalization are considered, and of course, giving each user the possibility to scrutinize and manage their own interaction and privacy models. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments. Okay, UAE, Doreen, welcome.
Hi. Greetings. This is Dareen Abulail. I'm the outreach manager from the Student Accessibility Services Department in Zayed University. As a development practitioner, I testify that change is much stronger when it comes from wise political will. The United Arab Emirates is a forward-thinking state declaring that all society members have equal rights to get digital services. Having that said, AI increasing demand will result in evidence-based and personalized learning experience for all students, including students with disabilities. The stigma around personalized learning experience will be eliminated, hopefully, because everyone will get to learn on a personalized basis where equitable access to education is a more proactive process rather than corrections of design mistakes. The conversation will completely shift focus from only securing the technology tools to design for better learning outcomes for each student. Demand on accessibility practitioner is on the rise, and higher educational institutions should strategize to respond to this demand at a systematic level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we want to end with the USA. Keith?
Good morning. My name is Keith Hayes. I'm the IT Accessibility Coordinator for the Urbana-Champaign campus of the University of Illinois in the United States. And as my colleague who just came before stated, demand for accessibility subject matter experts is on the rise. Frankly speaking, we do not have enough subject matter experts to meet demand. And current tools for doing accessibility evaluation are severely limited. They can only catch 20 to 50% of issues. The most impactful issues cannot even be detected. They can match patterns of invalid markup or the absence of beneficial markup, but they can't tell if the usage is appropriate for content. And so artificial intelligence and machine learning specifically there would allow us to create more powerful evaluation tools and expert systems that can both guide evaluation and create digital materials. One of the things tools cannot do now is do the type of intuitive analysis that accessibility subject matter experts can do. where they can detect certain patterns and from that intuit and predict that there are going to be more severe patterns present. And using artificially intelligent tools that can not only match patterns, but can learn when those patterns also will lead to more difficult issues, could even lead them to detect things that humans cannot detect. And so it would allow us to create systems that don't require subject matter experts and can greatly reduce the workload of those subject matter experts where they are needed.
Excellent. Thank you, Keith. Thank you to the whole panel. It's impressive everyone stayed on the minute. There were so many themes. I actually thought that there would be one or two themes that would kind of thread across the responses, but they were all over the place, and that was amazing and wonderful. Everything from language, dealing with the OCR, dealing with diversity of the workplace environment, cognitive disabilities, focused on that, personal needs. So there's just so much here, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time this morning, this afternoon, this evening to give us a pulse of what's going on specifically around machine learning and AI. So I thank you very much, and I appreciate your time. Okay, we're going to move on to our first panel, and thank you very much, everyone. It was awesome. And so I want to introduce Klaus Meisenberg. He's professor at Institute of Integrated Studies at JKU. He's also CSUN AT Conference Program chair and the Journal Track in Austria. So welcome, Klaus. I'm gonna have you introduce your panel, and we have about 30 minutes. So take it away.
Thank you very much. I trust you all can hear me. Thanks so much, Christopher, for inviting me. Klaus Meisenberg, I said, I'm professor for computer science at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. And I had and still have the privilege to work in assistive technology and accessibility for more than 30 years now. And from the beginning, we did a very user-centered approach towards that. So we built up a service center for students with disabilities. And therefore, I have more than 30 years experience about the accelerating development in the technical fields impacting on the situation of students with disabilities. And therefore, with Heraclit, I can say the only constant in strategic development is constant change. And in particular, nowadays, AI, digitization, and the small biological virus, again, ask for strategic reactions. Not only in technical, also strategically, never to forget that the issue of inclusion is, first of all, a human and social one. We do not want to build up technical high-tech ghettos. We have to focus that students can take part. They want to be part of it. They want to be part of the social process. They might be successful, they might be failed, but they want to feel as included students, whatever the technological environment is. And this needs according strategic reaction. And therefore, I'm more than pleased that we have a high-level panel of experts working in this direction in setting up models for strategic development, strategic actions at university. We have Mikhail Moscovoy, who already spoke to us. We have Kale Shakmit from Harvard University, and we have Andrew Sam from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. And as time is short and we have to be very careful with the time, we plan to have 3 rounds about strategic presenting and discussing strategic issues. And let's go right away into the first round about strategic considerations these days to face the challenges of digitization and inclusion. Perhaps best to start with Mikhail, because, so to say, he is close to midnight or closest to midnight from the panel, and therefore to keep him awake and keep you awake, Mikhail, perhaps you can start and give us some insights in your strategic ideas, concepts for the inclusion of students with disabilities. Mikhail, please.
Thank you, Mr. Meisenberg. It's a pleasure to be here today. And once again, hello to dear colleagues. if you don't mind, I would say a few words about our university. We are one of the leading engineering universities in Russia. It is Bauman University, and we have exclusively full-time education form, and the main part of it is practical training. So it is very difficult for us to transform it into digital format, as to say. At the same time, we have a huge history of teaching to students with disabilities. Now we have more than 150 students. Most of them are deaf and hard of hearing, and they study in a totally integrated form in mainstreams. So at the same time, it may sound strange, but our department, our students, has always been the driving force behind the university's innovations and also in digitalization. Once we were among the first to have computer classes, interactive whiteboards, online courses, and so on. And then our best practices were adopted by teachers for all our students. It's a common story, I think, for everybody. And so on the one hand, our strategy is to seek to naturally integrate our students into the digital educational environment of the university, eliminate any discrimination, remove sensory and cognitive barriers. And on the other hand, we always are looking for new, more effective solutions and adapting them to the needs of our students. And the last thing I would say is about social process. As you mentioned, I also agree that it is really vital for us. And these 2 years, almost 2 years of missed time of this social communication interaction for our students who are deaf and hard of hearing, it was really hard, and we see the results of this missed time. So, and it's a big challenge for us how to cope with it now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mikhail. If I may, a short question to that. So in this process of inclusion and also the social process, educators play a key role, be it in preparing material, being in terms of, so to say, starting and managing the process of social inclusion in classroom. Do you have any strategic consideration towards that direction, so to say, to train, prepare, or first make aware the educators that they understand and accept it as their role?
Yes, of course, it's very important. We have annual professional development programs, so-called, and they're required for all teachers. And one of the modules of this program is about accessibility, coping with students with disabilities, so these topics. And also we train all new faculty members who come to us to be teachers for our students. And we provide them with some guidelines and how to work with students with disabilities. So yes, we do that.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. Let me move on to our second panelist, Shakmit from the Harvard University, a model university in many senses, and therefore, of course, we also expect model strategies which we can take into account. And Kale, if we could ask, where do you start? Where is it more top-down? Is it more bottom-up to address the administration, management, financing, or whatever? What is, so to say, in short, the outline of the strategy you are working on, you are developing?
Sure. Thank you, Klaus, and thank you to the IAAP for inviting me to speak today. My name is Kyle Shakmit, and I lead the IT digital accessibility team at Harvard University. As Mikhail mentioned, the importance of classroom teaching and technology. As a large research university at Harvard, we also take very seriously the responsibility to disseminate that research and share it with the public and with other researchers and make it available to students. And if our knowledge creation and sharing is going to be shared, it needs to be accessible to everybody. So we take both approaches that you mentioned, Klaus, both a kind of top-down, if you will, and a bottom-up. So from a top down, our institutional leaders have set a wonderful model tone. We have a policy that says any website for our university needs to meet accessibility standards. Sometimes that can be a challenge. There are many, many, many thousands of websites at a large research university. But we want to make sure that everybody can access the information created and shared by faculty and staff and researchers and students at a large global research university. So we definitely have a little bit of top down to set the tone and the priorities that accessibility is an important institutional value, that we value inclusion, and one dimension of that inclusion is people with disabilities accessing our electronic content. But we also know that just saying something should be accessible doesn't make it happen. So we use the motto at our institution, we all have a role to play. And when we talk about our policy, we say, yes, there's a policy that says everything needs to be accessible, but we, the people who work at the university, all have a role to play in making it accessible, whether you're the person purchasing technology or maybe just researching to find somebody that can help build a website. Can they do it accessibly? Or to make sure that all of the graduate and teaching assistants that help put course materials are trained on accessibility, but everybody who touches documents or websites or research data has their own kind of role to play in valuing inclusion with the data and the materials that they help distribute.
Thank you so much, Kale. And short question, in terms you managed, so to say, this comprehensive strategical development, do you see it as granted and sorted out that higher level management, that the awareness, the understanding, the support is there? Is there a need for strategically develop something like a reporting to the management? And also be it the situation, how it is and where improvement is needed? Or so to say, is this no longer needed due to the legal enforcement and things like that?
It's always needed.
Yeah.
I've never worked at an institution where it wasn't needed. Excuse me, both to help remind people as of priorities or issues of concern, or to have the lens of access and inclusion. And then, of course, at a large institution, there's always turnover. And so the people that might be the senior leaders at an institution 1 year, in 2 or 3 years' time, there are new leaders. And so it is very important to make sure that there is updates and there are sharing of information so that the culture of inclusion doesn't depend on one single person or one single person's perspective, that it can be part of an institutional norm and an institutional value.
Thank you so much. And let's come to our third panelist, which brings us a bit more to the south on our planet. Andrew Sam. Andrew, your strategic ideas, your consideration. Perhaps you could introduce yourself as well a bit and then give us your first thoughts.
Thank you, Klaus. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone joining in. Thank you for this opportunity. So my name is Andrew Sam. I'm the adaptive technologist for the Disability Rights Unit at the University of the Witwatersrand, also known as WIT for short, in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I am a network systems engineer who has been working with assistive technology for over 18 years, and also at WITS, training and supporting students with various disabilities using assistive technology. So in terms of WITS's strategy in terms of digitization and inclusion, well, our commitment is really to provide an enabling platform to promote success by offering an environment that is rewarding, enriching, and inclusive, especially to all students and staff with disabilities. And that goes a long way to ensuring full participation in all aspects of university life. Now, as my colleagues before me just said, there are obviously lots of challenges, and I think we certainly on this side of the world experience the same challenges where certainly you need buy-in from the university, from the institution, from senior management, from the executives to generate and develop disability policies that enable staff and students to succeed and do what they're meant to do, study and work. Essentially, WITS took a decision many years ago to start moving into a digital space, moving sort of on registrations online to look at enhancing classroom learning using digital services, whether that's implementing, developing, or creating smart classrooms that can guide students on, or sort of provide students with better sort of learning and teaching services, as well as looking at things like reimagining our library to utilize the technology better, to see how students and staff also utilize technology in a better way. And we also know that as each year progresses, AT develops in such a way that it is easier, or does make life easier for a lot of students and staff with disabilities. And that's something that at WITS we certainly have embraced for a long, long time. We're one of the first universities in South Africa to support students with disabilities in 1986, something which has grown, seen steady growth in numbers over the years. And yeah, so it's something that we are very proud of, and we're happy to see our students graduate and succeed once they get out of the university. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Short question also to you. I'm really fascinated and interested in this idea of a common platform which brings together and developing such platform. Is this also meant to be, so to say, in terms of strategic development? Do you also work with the peer students, so the non-disabled students? Do you see them in a role also in this inclusion process? Is there anything, out of my experience, we are always struggling in this term, so to say, to get in contact and working with the mainstream students at the university. And is there any consideration in this direction and issues on the platform you're developing and you are working with?
Definitely. I think, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, it has forced a lot of institutions to look more digitally, to go more to a online learning sort of pedagogy. And something that WITS has certainly tried to do is obviously be more inclusive. So it's not and develop systems that not only support students with disabilities, but also support students without disabilities. And coming from a developing nation, we have a lot of technical challenges as well as environmental challenges that may not be the same as in other parts of the world. Things like where our students may come from a rural area and don't have mobile data coverage or even internet coverage, electricity, they might not have devices, laptops, smartphones that cannot and therefore cannot access their online courses. So there's a lot of things that a lot of challenges that we are having to deal with, on top of trying to find the right platform that is inclusive to everybody.
Thank you. So we can close our first one, and thank you so much for your insight and your strategic consideration. And I'm quite sure and confident that this helps us to reflect our own work, our own considerations, and brush them up for the future. For a second round, I would like to ask you on the panel to consider challenges which are coming along. I mean, as mentioned by many in this meeting and what we are aware of, there are so many challenges and fast ongoing changes, technological, industry issues, procurement issues, educators training, service provision, administration, financing, and so on. What is key? What do you see, so to say, as the issue? Perhaps with the one or the other example you in particular refocusing on these days, that we can, so to say, get a bit of an insight. What is a core focus about this? Perhaps, again, to start with Michael.
Thank you. Yes, since engineering education programs are extremely difficult, even for students without disabilities, for us, the biggest challenge is to ensure that it will be accessible not only sensory, but also. So we are trying to ensure that all emerging digital technologies, all the content is more accessible in a cognitive way. So as an example, I can say that we have one product that is terminological base of gestures used in engineering, and it solves several problems, both learning sign language, of course, and also like contextual immersion in the subject area by students, by teachers, by interpreters, and the students can, for example, find the meaning of this or that term, also to learn a new sign if he or she doesn't know it. And of course, the development of such tools requires consolidation of not only university administration, teachers, but also specialists, students, and itself, it is a separate challenge that we managed to cope with. And one more thing that I would like to mention is, as you said, peer students. I think they have a great potential for our challenges, and we see great willingness from them. And often they benefit from accessible things. So if teachers make something accessible for our students, all the students benefit. And we see that this helps to combine them and to make them more friendly with our students. And I think that's a great thing, and we shouldn't forget about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Short question, one more. You're very much in software development on this development of educational materials. Is there also a focus seen in terms of supporting educators, authoring system, that they are supported in terms of developing accessible, understandable, also cognitively better understandable materials? Or do you see this more as a service which is done by specialists?
We are trying to teach them how to do accessible materials. So in our educational program for teachers, we have that modules. So we don't have special staff who helps teachers to do it, but we are trying to work with teachers. And of course, it is quite easy with young people, and it is quite a challenge with those who are in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. But even them,
close to my age range. Okay, thank you very much, Mikhail. Let me move again to Kyle. Where do you see the most challenging issues and the focus which you see for the next month, for the next years, perhaps the one or the other example?
Sure. First and foremost, I think it's critically important that we continue to promote and encourage the inclusion of students and especially scholars with disabilities to be key parts of our institutions. You know, if people are studying, for example, or creating accessible technology, but they aren't involving students and scholars with disabilities, it has much less impact. You know, our institution should be able to train and inspire and then hopefully hire a next generation of disabled scholars in a whole lot of different disciplines. If we only make disability studies or assistive technology very important fields, but if those are the only fields that we make accessible, we have failed. We're limiting ourselves and the potential and the creativity of those audiences. So, you know, I know lots of disabled scholars in computer science or literature, anthropology, public health, law, business. And in the same way that we value the perspective of diverse faculty and teachers and scholars in all of these disciplines, whether it be, indigenous communities or racial diversity, valuing and allowing these scholars to bring their perspective as persons with disabilities into their work will only enhance the research and the teaching and inspiring the next generation of scholars. So I think making sure that we include scholars with disabilities and promoting their work is very important, and that really affects a lot of the tools that we reach, right? If we work with vendor partners and they say we can make everything accessible for students to consume, people with disabilities are not just passive consumers, they are creators, they are researchers, they are people building content. And so we need to allow and afford for that in the technologies that we purchase and that we promote and that we build at our institutions.
Wonderful. And so if I may ask, is then also the next step in terms of bringing the same idea out of the universities when students graduate, when they go out to industry, that they find a job? Is this also a part of your strategic thinking, labor market inclusion of your graduates?
Absolutely. If we need to make sure that the tools and the techniques that we train students on are accessible so that they learn the skills and the techniques they need, and that they can take them into large companies or start their own business or work in the nonprofit sector and use those skills to help inspire others and to do great work around the world.
Thank you so much, Gail. And Andrew, if I would ask you, when you go back to work tomorrow, what is the thing you are working on, and what you would like to see sorted out in the next month or year?
All right, thank you, Klaus. So essentially, I think I already talked about some of the countrywide challenges that we had, but in terms of an institutional challenge, I think certainly, once again, moving to a fully online sort of teaching has certainly pushed forward the university's emphasis on digitization, and because of that, my department has been heavily involved in terms of ensuring accessibility and inclusivity to the different platforms, online platforms, and the online services that's been provided to our students during the pandemic. And that's something that is always a challenge, because we do need that support and buy-in, once again, from the institution to be included on these committees, high-level committees that make these decisions about choosing what online platform to use or what services to ensure it is accessible to, for example, for screen readers. It has captions built in for our deaf and hard of hearing students and staff. Things like that. That is the real challenge. But once again, you could get the support from senior management, but then, as my colleague from Russia already said, you need to have the training to the staff to utilize those tools that's been put in place. It's no point in having the tools there and no one uses it. So training and support from the institution to academics and other staff members, as well as students, to utilize what has been put in place to ensure that the teaching and learning is effective.
Thank you. And one thing, if I could ask, in your environment, is it sorted out that faculty members, educational staff, that they, so to say, have moved digital? Or do you see also a problem that not only in terms of accessibility, but we have some cases, not at our faculty, but in other faculties, they are simply not really enthusiastic to move education towards digital. And of course, not digital means, of course, much more, and all the challenges which we have in terms of accessibility. Do you see such an issue in your environment, or would you say this is with the pandemic and already before this is sorted out?
There are definitely, I think, once again, in terms of change, people are reluctant for change. And I think our institution is predominantly a face-to-face teaching institution. So moving digitally was a big challenge, and sitting on these committees, we have academics that do voice their concerns, their challenges in terms of moving online, something that they've not done before. But obviously, it's something where, once again, the institution then needs to show the benefits of moving online, whether that is, allowing students the opportunity to utilize different tools, different devices, whether it's assistive devices or any other built-in tools into the platforms, to learn how to teach more effectively, a different way of teaching possibly. And that's something that our institution is heavily trying to move forward and look toward to better the teaching environment for our students.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And it's great to see that more and more questions, comments are coming up in the chat. And I have to excuse, I'm most probably not able to go through all of them and bring them into the discussion. I leave it to the panel later on to look into the chat, and perhaps we are able to answer them. I trust that the questions will be secured and that they will be integrated into a report. I would like to finish our panel discussion by simply giving all our panelists, our three panelists, the opportunity to raise a wish, what they would like to see done, be it in terms of management, organization, financing, or other political issues which they would like to see happening in the next days. And may I ask to be short, as we had it with the country view in about 1 minute. And perhaps we do it the other way around. And Andrew, perhaps you want to be first?
Sure. Thank you, Klaus. So just in closing, just would like to say from my point of view, digital inclusion certainly plays a crucial role in defining the educational landscape of the future. It not only provides an enabling platform for students and staff with disabilities, but it also promotes enhanced learning and engagement for all students and staff. And it's something that I hope with the improvement in technologies that we will be able to see that going forward in the future. So I would just like to say thank you, and thank you to everyone for having me.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And Kale, your last statement, your wish?
I wish that our technology partners and vendors that we work with can continue to help enable faculty and staff and students at universities to create more accessible content more easily. I wish it was easier to create accessible content and harder to create inaccessible content. Earlier, I said, we like to say we all have a role to play when it comes to accessibility, which is true, but faculty members and researchers are the world's experts in their fields, and they're often not the world's experts in accessibility. And they shouldn't have to be to create accessible, easy to use content disseminating the research. So I hope that we can continue to find partners and developers and solutions that can help our inspiring researchers create and share accessible content easily.
Thanks so much, Kale. And Mikhail?
As for me, I wish more international cooperation to eliminate this gap between most advanced universities and countries in this fast evolving digital world. So I hope we all meet more often and more productive. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
So this allows me to close our panel, and I'm very pleased to see that we are well on time. Thank you very much for your contributions, Mikhail, Andrew, and Kale. I do think we got a very interesting overview and very good examples of how to push forward and further develop an environment which allows the big diversity of students, the big diversity of staff contributing to a richer and more fruitful academic studying environment. And of course, the challenges are enormous, as we heard, but I'm quite sure it's really a start. Digitization opens a lot of new opportunities. We often hear that digital technology is disruptive. Processes which were not inclusive are changing, and this gives us the opportunity that we influence them, that we build new processes, new approaches to allow better participation by a bigger diversity. And in this area, everybody who works in the field and everybody who is teaching, everybody who has a responsibility in this environment should take it up and develop his own strategy to make the university a more inclusive field. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks to the panelists again, and let's rock on and make the university inclusive.
Klaus, thank you. This is Christopher, the panelists. Thank you. There was so much here, top-down approach, common platform, inclusive. We've also got peer students, different tools, especially for engineering that came up during that, for innovation, focused on cognitive disabilities. A lot of really good stuff to take in and digest during this. Some great comments that are coming in. We're going to hear a little bit about some of the information just from our next speaker. We've got a poll coming up next, and then we've got a 5-minute break. And then I'm going to be bringing in Laura Allen. Hello, Laura. We're going to be talking a little bit about innovation that will impact higher education. She's going to tell us a little bit what Google's doing, super site. She's also going to talk a little bit about Teach Access. So panelists, thank you, Klaus and team, so much. Excellent, excellent panel. And we're going to now go ahead and get the poll up there. Okay. So we've got a poll, and this poll is, we're going to give a minute or so. Does the universities that you are most familiar with offer courses on digital accessibility? There's 3 options you have. It's yes, no, or I don't know. Again, does the university that you are most familiar with offer courses in digital accessibility? Yes, no, or I don't know. Give you 1 minute. We'll read the results, and then what we'll do is come back after a 5-minute break, and I'll have my interview with Laura. It's still going. It's still going. Okay, so we are still seeing things that are moving with the poll itself, but I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. We see yes, 39, that's 26%, no, 40%, and I don't know, 34%. So again, yes, 26%, no, 40%, and I don't know, 34%. So we've got some, we need to increase that yes, and hopefully some of the information that Laura will talk to us after the break, specifically around Teach Access, will help us do that. So I'm going to share the results. And then we're going to take this 5-minute break, come back in 5 minutes for my interview. Thank you very much.
The 2021 M-Enabling Summit and Virtual Leadership Briefing is powered by Google. The Virtual Leadership Briefing today is supported by organizations such as the organizers of today's M-Enabling Summit is G3ICT and EJ Krause. Thank you to the G3ICT IAAP EJ Krause virtual production team. Thank you to today's accessibility team, captionists, and interpreters. Join us on Twitter at M-Enabling Summit, hashtag M-Enabling21, hashtag M-Enabling Briefing 21. Images on today's slide include people learning, laughing together. Images on this slide include speakers, presenters, and friends and colleagues. Today's virtual leadership briefing and M-Enabling Summit is powered by Google. Images on this slide include networking, learning, speakers, and presenters. This slide includes exploration of assistive technology, presenters, networking, and friends laughing together. Images on this slide include presenters, speakers, colleagues, and award winners. Save the date for October 4th through the 6th in Washington, D.C. for the 2021 M-Enabling Summit. Images on this slide include exploring assistive technology, presenters, and colleagues learning together. This slide features images of presenters, colleagues joining together in the exhibit floor. This slide features virtual reality exploration, our Chairman Awards. Save the date for October 4th through the 6th, 2021 in Washington, D.C. Join us for M-Enabling 2021. This slide features people learning in panel sessions and presentations. Images here feature the FCC Chairman's Award presentations. Featured on this slide are images of friends and colleagues joined together at M-Enabling. Join us on Twitter at M-Enabling Summit, M-Enabling 21, and M-Enabling Briefing 21. Today's virtual leadership briefing is powered by Google. The next session will begin momentarily. Please enjoy your break.
All right, Laura, I'm going to bring you on and we're going to get started.
Sounds great.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Sam. I hope everyone enjoyed the break, and we have a wonderful session for you, the second part of our session coming up right now. And that is, I want to bring in Laura Allen, who's the head of strategy, accessibility, and disability inclusion at Google, who is our sponsor today. Laura, it is wonderful to have you here. I had the opportunity to talk to Laura last week and enjoyed the chat and learning what you do, and looking forward to, over the next 10 minutes to hear about what Google's doing. And I want to just start off by asking you a little bit about yourself. I mean, how did you get into the position that you are in right now?
Thank you so much, Christopher. And I'm so honored to be here. What an incredible group of people. Oh my goodness. So yeah, a little bit about me. So I have a very rare visual condition called choroidal osteomas, which developed when I was 10 years old in my left eye. And then basically when I was 14 years old, the same thing developed in my right eye. So for me, this visual condition impacts my central vision. So anything I look directly at is heavily impacted, covered in sort of lots and lots of little flashers and pulsing lights, distortion, and peripherally for me, things are still relatively intact, but it really, really was a drastic period of change when I was 14. And all of a sudden this was in both eyes. And I was in my 8th grade year and about to enter high school, and went from being able to, have typical 20/20 vision to all of a sudden being legally blind and no longer being able to read a book, to see the chalkboard, to distinguish faces and all of that. So those early years were such a heavy, heavy period of transition for me. And working with my school and working with, honestly, with my family most closely to try to piece together all the things that had broken down in the processes. You know, my high school didn't really know the best way to support me. I was one of the first students to go through the high school that needed some sort of accessible formats and needed to use audio spoken feedback. And those early years, again, early high school for me, was defined by dependence. And I'd go home after school and my parents would literally read aloud to me to bridge those gaps. And my dad would teach me all my math courses because my teachers weren't quite able to figure out, you know, how do you educate a student who can't see the chalkboard? And over those couple of years, we figured out the right mix of assistive technologies and the right processes for me to regain my independence in school. And this really included, you know, getting all the physical textbooks and stripping their bindings and running the pages through a high-speed scanner, using OCR software, and then being able to use text-to-speech to listen. And that process by no means was perfect, but it was mostly reliable. Of course, there were lots of errors in that process, but it was mostly reliable and really started to teach me the true power of technology and helped me to regain my independence. So after that, I went to Georgetown University and I had a very, very close relationship with the student services team there. So I just wanted to take one moment to thank everybody sincerely who works in this realm of universities and colleges supporting students with disabilities, because I will tell you that that relationship with Dr. Jane Holohan at Georgetown was so transformational for me to be able to know that I have a partner who has my back, and I know that I'll be able to have my materials in an accessible format quickly. It really enabled me and freed me up to know that I could study whatever I wanted to study and that wouldn't be a barrier. So I just want to sincerely say thank you. The work you do is absolutely so important. And at Georgetown, I studied marketing and international business and music as a minor. And I loved all of that. And I wound up actually getting to Google right out of college and working in a totally different area than I do now early on. This was 11 years ago. And I was working in the sales division and working on advertising and marketing sales strategies. And I started to sort of just reach out to different teams. Like, for example, I'd reach out, hey, Gmail team, I'm low vision and I have some feedback for you. Or would you be up for chatting? And I just was so impressed by the very warm reception I was getting from different teams. And they really just said, yeah, let's sit, let's get coffee, let's talk through this. And basically at that point, I started uncovering the fields within Google of accessibility and was able to kind of, over the years, work on a number of different side projects, really increase my knowledge in this space outside of just my unique view of assistive tech and technology. But I realized that over that time, exactly how much of a true sort of calling this was for me, in that I look back on those early years of dependence on my family, and I'm the first to recognize exactly how lucky that was, that I had a family that could support me in that way and could bridge those gaps for me. And I know that's not the case for so many people with disabilities. So my main mission at Google is to help to use technology and to use Google's massive scale and platform to be able to help to level the playing field through the use of technology. So I'm really excited about, almost 8 years ago, I transitioned into a full-time role leading the Chrome and Chrome OS accessibility teams, very rooted in the product space. So working on building out the different assistive tools into the browser and into Chromebooks, also working on making the broader browser and the broader interface on Chromebooks more accessible and more usable for people with all types of different disabilities. And then I got to do a lot of work in the education space in that role, and do a lot of work with the community, because I truly believe, and so many of us believe, that we need to be building with the community and integrating feedback from people with disabilities outside of just our companies, of course. So I spent a long time in that role, rooted in Chrome and Chrome OS, and then as of last year, I transitioned into a role on our centralized accessibility team at Google, where I focus on strategy across the company, whether this is in our product space, in our internal processes, but also in this realm of disability inclusion. So thinking about, how do we make Google a really, really great place to work for people with disabilities? So yeah, a little bit about me.
There's so much there to unpack. I mean, just flipping back just some of the words that you said. I mean, growing up, where your disability came and you had to deal with it, and it changed and shifted based on our conversation. So the accommodations that you needed, the assistive technology, all shifted and changed, and your parents was there to support you. And DSPs, applaud them, right? Disability service providers are amazing, and that transition from your parents to them, I really commend you sharing that, by the way. And it's important, I think, for people with disabilities to be able to be proactively telling their stories. So thank you for that, by the way.
Absolutely. It hasn't always been easy. I will say that I've learned to be more open now. And it was such a shift for me, I have to admit. When I started working in the field of accessibility, I realized exactly how much value I could actually add by being open and talking about my experiences. Whereas prior roles, I didn't know, especially as just, a new graduate and being so young and not sure about my place in an organization and things like that. I definitely had to learn the path of disclosure and when do I feel comfortable disclosing and to whom. And I just realized, and I always encourage this to so many folks with disabilities now, students that I chat with and mentor, of, you are adding value. Know that your perspective is important and that the diversity is what really makes everything better in these corporations. So I know it's a personal path. It's not something that is as smooth and easy, but yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. And so tell us a little bit about what Google's doing. You told us a little bit about your role, but specifically around some of the innovative projects that Google has that could impact or are impacting higher education.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a lot of directions we could go in, and I know we only have a few minutes, but I think so. A lot of the work that Google does, it can break it down into a few different chunks. So some of the work has to do with, again, like making our core products more accessible and more usable for assistive technology users. So thinking about things, I know a number of products are heavily used in higher education, like, for example, Google Docs or Google Slides. Even Chromebooks are being more and more heavily used. Different interfaces like that to just say, how do we make sure that this is a usable, accessible experience for anyone, regardless of how they're interacting with it? So a lot of our work has to do with that. But then there's also a lot of work that goes on across many teams of actually building out different assistive technology tools into our products. So for example, some of the recent things that have been announced or launched, which could certainly impact education, or like I think about things like Chrome Live Captions as one example, which is generating automatic captions. And I think about this because I remember getting sent videos frequently in university courses that weren't captioned. And we know the best practice is always add captions, make them professional captions. But we know that that's still not always the reality. So finding ways to be able to supplement that through the use of automatic captions through Chrome or through Google Meet. I know, for example, in this past year and a half of the pandemic, with so many courses going fully virtual, sometimes we need to rely on that. And we know that captions they can be so useful, obviously, for many different groups of people, whether deaf and hard of hearing students, but also, of course, students who are learning English as a second language, or students who have, maybe they're not in the best connectivity from learning from home in some cases, and being able to refer back to the captions is really important. So I think that that's a really important part of technology that's being built. I also know that there's a lot of conversation earlier on in the sort of global roundtable that went on, which was super cool, about AI. And I know that there's a lot of different things going on. For example, on the Chrome side, there was this feature that was developed called Get Image Descriptions. And I think this is such a cool application of using AI, of understanding what's in an image and knowing, again, the best practice is always going to be for developers to add alt text and add the description themselves to be able to provide somebody using a screen reader that full context of exactly what the image is for and what's in it. But knowing that we're not there yet, we need to be able to help, again, supplement that in a way by providing automatically generated captions. So I think that I'm really excited to see where we can continue adding more applications of AI into our products. Another interesting one to think about is there's an Android app called Lookout that Google builds, which is using machine learning to understand what is in the world around us, using the camera on the phone to perceive objects and people, and try to provide that description, again, to give our blind and low vision users more context about the world around them. And then the one last thing I'll mention is just there's been a lot of additional focus on understanding more about cognitive inclusion and more about design best practices, as well as different tools for cognitive inclusion. And I know there's a team that's working on the Chromebook side, for example, that was building a really enhanced version of our tool called Select to Speak, just adding more and more functionality of being able to play, pause, resume, really see different highlighting of words as they're spoken aloud, and promote better focus and shading content behind what's being read aloud, to really be able to focus in on the core content. And they're working on more and more features in that space, just trying to understand, not only for someone like me who's low vision, who needs that feature heavily, but for people who have learning and processing challenges that could really just benefit from that audio and visual connection at the same time. So lots of different projects going on, but just a little bit of a hint there. Yeah.
A little bit of a dive. I mean,
yeah.
How many products does Google have? I mean, it's like
I couldn't even tell you.
I'm so glad that you're there. So tell us a little bit. We only have a couple minutes left, but I want to hear a little bit about Teach Access, because you're real involved in it and you're very passionate about it. So you tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So Teach Access has been around now for over 5 years, which is amazing.
Wow.
And it is this wonderful collaboration. It's an organization that brings together many different companies, mostly tech, but we now have many other companies outside of tech too. Then many colleges and universities right now in the US, but hoping to expand that internationally, as well as disability advocacy organizations. And the whole goal is to try to get accessibility infused into the curriculum of computer science and human-centered interaction and design curriculum, and a bunch of other disciplines as well. Just trying to get it so that when students are learning, accessibility is part of that core narrative. It's not something that's just only taught in an accessibility specific course, only targeted at specialists, but it's something that's just expected for all students to learn. And then when the students graduate and go search for jobs, this can be something that they bring value to the companies about, like they're able to hit the ground running in any role that they go into. Again, not just accessibility specific roles, any general software engineering role, any design role, and they can be the voice of accessibility and they can hit the ground running by building accessibly and inclusively. So there's a lot of work going on in the realm of Teach Access. If you're interested, go to teachaccess.org. But there's lots of work. For example, we just announced our latest round of faculty grants. So giving different professors grants to be able to really focus in on building more accessibility into their curriculum. We just finished up our virtual version of our Study Away Silicon Valley program with over 80 different students from many different universities coming together to learn from so many different companies about their approaches to accessibility, and so many different universities. And they really got to deep dive and do group projects in this virtual environment and then pitch them. And it was such a fun set of weeks of all these different courses. But again, it's just really trying with many different projects to integrate accessibility and just, again, make it part of the mainstream curriculum. And we're really excited because Teach Access is going to be accelerating the pace over the next few years. And we've got a lot of momentum. We're going to be increasing some of the funding coming in, and we're just really excited about where this can possibly go, building out more and more curriculum that's going to be a little bit more like plug and play for universities,
nice.
Just to make it easier. So yeah, we're excited.
That's great. Well, I mean, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to talk about Teach Access, and the link is in the chat.
Great.
So any final words that you just want to share with us, whether it's, I mean, from the advocacy side, obviously you're very passionate about, or the innovation side?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just excited about where the next few years are going to take all of us. I'm excited that we're, not just at Google by any means, the industry is shifting the conversation from compliance more to usability. I think that's really, really important to be thinking about like delight and usability. And I think that this whole shift towards like, how do we become more innovative? How do we think outside the box and work with people with disabilities to figure out the right solutions? I think that's really the key. And I hope to see many different companies and universities able to do that more and more. So I just want to say thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and thanks for putting this on. I think it's just an amazing day.
Well, thank you to Google, by the way, because they're sponsoring this. And it's such a wonderful pleasure to have you here and share your story and tell us a little bit about what's going on with Google. So thank you so much, Laura, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. So we are moving on to our second panel. This is our final panel for this event. And we're going to put the slide up right here. This is mainstreaming accessibility principles and knowledge in curriculum. We have 30 minutes. Great panelist. Alejandro is here. He's a lecturer, Department of Artificial Intelligence at the, we've heard from him already, but the National University for Distance Education in Spain. Welcome, and I look forward to hearing your panel.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much to you and IAAP for the invitation. I hope that my voice is coming to you clear. And I'm really honored to be part of this panel. And just let me say a few words to introduce myself, that I have been teaching and researching on IT accessibility and IT mediated support for independent living for 20 years now. That's a long story, but the latest project I'm involved in is a MOOC channel that is offering now 7 open courses on universal accessibility with different approaches. It's only in Spanish, I'm afraid, but we are very proud to that so far 16,000 students have already registered for its courses. They mainly come from Spain and Latin America, but also from the States and other parts of the world. It's funded by Fundación 11 and by the Spanish Ministry of Social Affairs. The name is Canal Fundación 11 UNED, and I will share its URL later on through the Zoom chat. But anyhow, the title of the panel that is about to start is Mainstreaming Accessibility Principles and Knowledge in Curricula. First, let me say that the poll that was run right before the break did not have very encouraging results, did it? The question was, does the university you are familiar with offer courses on digital accessibility? We've had a total of 158 respondents, which is not bad. And 40% of them said no. If we take in consideration that we are in an accessibility-friendly environment, we may infer that the real situation is even worse. Also, let me say that if I was not moderating this panel, I would have registered anyhow to this, because the topic is very attractive and so are our panelists. As we have Dena Ahmed Al-Thani, who is assistant professor at the College of Science and Engineering and at the Hamad bin Khalifa University, Qatar. Gottfried Zimmermann, he's a professor in mobile user interaction at the Media University in Stuttgart, Germany, and Jonathan Lazar, professor, the College of Information Studies at the University of Maryland, and he's also associate director of the Trade Center USA. There are several aspects about I will suggest the panelists to comment on, like the creation of the curricula on accessibility, how to build a curriculum on digital inclusion, the design and use of learning contents and activities. If we have time, also about what's the role of certification, which I think is a very hot topic and very important in all countries, and what's the sustainability of all this. To begin with, I would like to talk about the creation of the curricula on accessibility. I don't think that the programs that you are teaching in exist just to satisfy the demands of external accreditation bodies or even the demands of your own university. Why are you teaching digital inclusion? Please, Dena, would you like to start, please?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the very kind invite. And it is such a pleasure to be on such an important panel discussing an important aspect. So basically, there are two reasons, just to summarize. The first reason is a personal reason. I'm very interested in accessibility, assistive technology. It's been my field of research for the past 14 years. I've been introduced to this field during my undergraduate studies and my postgraduate studies at Queen Mary University of London, where I got introduced to assistive technology, and I got interested in, and I just continued my whole career in this area. And there where I thought it's important to teach students and give them a taste of what I have personally enjoyed and felt that I can make a difference in the world around me. The second aspect is basically in Qatar, as you may all know, we have a pioneering assistive technology center, which is called MEDA. And under MEDA, basically umbrella, there is a very high interest in education and facilitating accessibility education. So I worked hard to get a partnership between my university and MEDA for them to establish a partnership and for us to establish courses and material in educating people about the importance of accessibility. How can we build an accessible content, and how can we work toward accessibility in the region around us, in the Arab world? Basically, inclusion and accessibility in the Arab world is extremely important on all levels, from community to university to the national levels as well. It's we speak and read in Arabic, so can I make Arabic content accessible? That's another question that we introduce. And not only the language, it's the culture. Talking about the blind, for example, or autistic children, how can I build a content that is culture sensitive as well? So that's the main reason why I'm very interested and keen to have accessibility in the core material of college degrees, whether it's a postgraduate or an undergraduate degree.
Thank you, Dena. You mentioned that partnership with MEDA, which is giving you more strength for your. Could you summarize the key aspects of that, the goodness of doing partnership with other institutions or networks?
Sure. So MEDA, as I said, they have this keen, very clear message is to support accessibility for the PWDs or the elderly. And now they are working in developing the MEDA ICT assistive technology and accessibility competency framework. And this framework is basically a platform of knowledge to support educators when they teach accessibility and assistive technology material. And I've been one of the advisors in developing this content-based framework to support whether it's an accreditation or a postgraduate or an undergraduate degree. So MEDA is helping us very much in this area, and I think I'm lucky to have them here in Qatar.
Thank you very much. Gottfried, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you for all the organizers of organizing this great conference. And it's a pleasure to be in this panel. There are lots of reasons why we teach accessibility and all this involved technologies. I'll give you two of them. So my background is computer science. I'm a computer scientist. And I really find it fascinating that we can have this combination of users, human needs, and technology on the other side. So I don't find that in any other area of computer science in the same way. So if you just talk about user experience, then it's a lot about social engineering and studies. But with accessibility, we have all included, and we can make use of these upcoming technologies, as we just heard by Laura from Google and others, and AI in the Global Voices. So it's really fascinating to take these technologies, test them, develop them further so they are usable by people with disabilities. That's really an interest in research and in teaching, and I see that students are actually taking on and catching up on this, and that many of them are intrigued and motivated by this great combination, technology in the service of humans. Now, I know there is always a danger to just go from the technology side to it, but I feel like we can make use of this because young people, like in my study programs, are like really to model technologies, to build concepts and so. And I've seen that students really get onto this, get onto this area of interest using technologies. Second reason, just a pure self-interest, because we're getting older. I myself get older, and at some point I will certainly need these assistive technologies and will need electronic media being built in accessible ways. And I'm already seeing that my eyesight is not as it was when I was 20 or 25. So usually I wear glasses, but I need glasses for driving and for looking in the distance. So yes, it's a good thing to know that the younger generation will take care of me and I will be able to use electronic media when I get old.
Thank you. Gottfried, a question about your own university. Are they asking professors to design accessibility modules? What's the policy of your university on that?
So as all
external accreditation body.
Yeah, as all universities in Germany, there is absolute freedom of teaching. So there is no committee that can dictate what a professor is teaching in their courses. But of course, there is kind of agreement in the departments as to who is taking on what responsibility in teaching. So for me, it's my job to do usability and accessibility from the technical side in computer science. There are other professors, colleagues who do that more from the social sciences or from user experience side. But we're a small university, about 150 lecturers only. And so we really, in this case, we need to build it bottom up mostly. We need to help the colleagues, professors and lecturers to make it easy for them to really do teaching in an accessible way and on a voluntary basis, basically.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Jonathan, would you like to continue, please?
Absolutely. A pleasure to be part of this panel, and hi to all of my great colleagues taking part today. It's sort of an interesting situation at the University of Maryland. We actually have a lot of demand from students and from the local community for teaching more about accessibility. So it's not coming from external accreditation or something like that. Historically, the college that I'm in, the College of Information Studies, has had a long track record of doing work on diversity and inclusion. We have within the state of Maryland, a lot of the national US disability rights organizations are headquartered nearby. So National Association of the Deaf, National Federation of the Blind. And within Washington, DC, of course, we have everything from the American Association of Persons with Disabilities headquarters to the headquarters for the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. So we have a lot of demand, we have a lot of resources, but we also have a lot of demand from our students for teaching about accessibility. And we have a lot of demand also from the federal government as well, that they need a lot of people trained. I mean, I get calls from people in the federal government saying, you're not churning out enough students who know accessibility, right? How can you crank this up? How can we get more? So there's a lot of demands for accessibility services for people qualified in the state of Maryland and in DC. The demand comes from our students as well. So we already have a lot of curriculum related to digital accessibility. and we're still trying to add a lot more. And I believe that's part of the next question is what we're adding, right? So I'll stop there.
I feel envy for what you're saying. I would borrow you some of them, all that.
We'll hire you to teach a class adjunct remotely. Trust me, we have a very high demand. I'll sign all of you up to teach classes.
Thank you. I will talk to my university. So, okay, programs, we have to design them, and it's not always easy. And I will ask you about any inspiring references you have used, and also what's the best approach for designing is specialist programs or trying to mainstream the accessibility into generic modules, I would say. And it has pros and cons. So I would start with Gottfried, because you mentioned you're a computer scientist. I'm teaching in a computer science faculty, and I would find very useful and very effective to convince my colleagues if ACM curricula would bring in more accessibility. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I myself have tried to get accessibility into the German curriculum of the German Computing Association, and was partly successful only. But yes, to me, it's really important that we teach accessibility in computer science and of course, all the design classes, not as kind of add-on. So there needs to be like a mainstream part to all design and HCI courses, where we not only hear about needs, but we really engage students in designing user journey maps, or even web pages, or whatever is subject of the course, to be accessible, really a hands-on a problem solving approach, not just hearing and then forgetting about it. I think that's really important. So I myself have actually used WCAG, Web Accessibility, Web Accessibility Guidelines, and let students look for errors in web pages, and used my university's homepage for that. Now they're getting better now, so I need to look for some other target. But anyway, that's a good side effect. And if people have hands-on, another thing would be let them configure their computer or their mobile smartphone to be usable by a person with a specific disability. And they discover, oh, there's lots of things built into my Android or iOS system, and that makes it tangible. And that's really important in teaching. And then we have the other courses that we're in now actually in the progress of setting up. So courses where students can really work with us on projects in web accessibility, really get deep into the technical stuff like Way Aria, and also for mobile apps. And I am the technical director of a Competence Center for Digital Accessibility. And we have external clients, other universities or organizations, industry, that give us orders to check their web pages and things like that. And we want to really educate the students in helping us and supporting us to really conduct these orders and work on reports. And of course, we'll do quality checking on them. But later, once they are really specialists, once they've gone through this class and passed the exam, they will actually be able to work with us as project assistants on real projects for other organizations and industries. And I think that's what they really want. It's a win-win situation for us and for the students.
Thank you very much. I think that the day of the institutional web page of our universities or the ATM machines will work correctly, we will have nothing to do, nothing to teach to our students. Dina, what has been your experience when designing? Any particular reference you'd like to share?
Sure. So basically, I teach interactive design for the past 4 years for our postgraduate student. And for me, as accessibility and assistive technology is always in my heart. So I had to have actually a series of lectures in this generic course, let's say, that discusses universal access, the WCAG guidelines, and giving assignment. And actually something interesting I would hear from our students usually come from a data science track or engineering or electronic engineering track. They would always tell me that this class in particular is an eye-opener. Because they would realize that they have a broader context of users. So they don't always design for the mainstream, but in fact they need to consider, and as we said, we would always at some certain time or age, we will have a disability in some sort. Eyesight or other disabilities. So we need to put these aspects in mind. And usually this course is very interesting for them, and I would take them to Meta Center for them to see how the website accreditation happens, how do apps accreditation happens in Qatar, and how do we ensure a website is accessible. And then toward the end of the semester, they will have an assignment to check the accessibility of maybe the university website. I would usually ask them to choose some website, and because most of them are part-timers, so they work in their own institute. So I would tell them, check the accessibility of the website of the institute you work in. And now I'm in the process of developing an ICT accessibility course that will be offered for our undergraduate. And that course will be fully dedicated to the accessibility and assistive technology.
Thank you, Dina. Jonathan, Dina and Gottfried have shared some of the practices or the good practices to engage and to motivate learners. Do you have any to share with us that has proven to be effective?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can actually give 2 examples in addition to what they've already said. As they both mentioned, that we try to integrate accessibility in the curriculum, not just provide it at the end. And there are 2 ways that we do this. One, first of all, for instance, the graduate class, Fundamentals of Human-Computer Interaction. We teach accessibility in the first class they take, not in the last class they take. Because obviously one of the big problems is people learn about accessibility right at the end, and then students sometimes think of it in that way. Oh, you build something and then you go back and add accessibility. Of course, we know that's the least effective way to do it. The most effective way is to integrate accessibility when you do design. So in that fundamentals class, we also do something similar in an undergraduate class. So it's not at the end, but there's a requirement for all students to learn about accessibility. But in the fundamentals of HCI class at a graduate level, students not only learn about accessibility in their first class, but also they do a comparison study, right? And the idea is often, again, if you know a little bit about accessibility, right, but not a lot, students often will type in a URL into an automated testing tool and say, oh my gosh, look, there's 100 accessibility flaws. Wow, this is really bad, and stop there. And so what I do instead is I have the students do a manual inspection of a website, right, using the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and then I have them use the automated tool afterwards. So they don't just think an automated tool like Wave or something, aha, that's the final answer, but they actually get to learn that there are lots of different approaches, right, with different levels of accuracy, as one of the speakers earlier today mentioned. And so that's another approach we do. There's a class that we couldn't offer during the pandemic, but one class that I've offered at both the University of Maryland and previously at Towson University. And that's where I actually have students, and that's a separate class, where I have students go out and engage with organizations in the community and engage with people with disabilities. And so, again, we have a lot of great resources. And, you know, it's not the same learning experience to read about it on the web as it is to go visit the Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, or to go to the headquarters of the National Federation of the Blind, or to go and visit. I mean, in DC, we've done this to Gallaudet University, you know, the university for deaf students in DC, right? And so I try as much as possible to get students outside of that, oh, I just read about accessibility in a book and I'm done. I try to get them to either understand, like the example of learning different methods even at the beginning, to understand how effective one is versus another. And then ideally, post-pandemic again, I try to get students out in the community, meeting people face to face and getting that understanding of the context of use.
Thank you very much. We have some 2 minutes to finish, but I would like to address one very important topic that for me as a lecturer is important. This is the increasing importance of certificates. What's the role of us, like teachers? How do we align what we teach at university with these certificates? Because in the end, we want our students to be very well prepared for when they get to work. So Godfrey, would you like to comment?
I think it's very important. It's another motivation for students. If we tell them, okay, if you have passed this exam at university, we give you the opportunity of acquiring a certificate that is industry-widely acknowledged and has like the big companies on it, basically. We actually we have a project that's going to start in August with funding, and one of its measures will be really to make that happen and to give recommendations to other universities to align their course programs to the IAAP certifications. And I'm glad IAAP has that program, and I've been personally involved in translating that to the German language, the bodies of knowledge and the exam questions. Not that my students would necessarily need that, but we also teach professional development courses. And there we see that when it comes to exam situations, people really in Germany prefer the German language.
I think that cultural aspect is very important. Dina, would you like to add something?
Yes, of course. So usually, as you said, most of our students are part-timers who already have jobs. So what I usually do, I would guide them through the certificate programs available to support them in their own jobs. And I would usually have like a slide or two telling them toward the end of the class that there are a professional track related to accessibility, and if it can be of your interest. And I've seen actually some of my own postgraduate student, my master's student and my PhD working toward attaining these certificates, and just putting it on spot in the classes, I think is extremely important.
Thank you very much. Jonathan?
Aside from the courses that I mentioned previously, which are the ones where all the students have to take them that have they have accessibility components, we're actually in the process of developing both an undergraduate major on accessibility and also a separate certificate program within our master's degree focused on accessibility. And actually, we are looking at trying to integrate certification into the master's program. So if you're coming for a master's in human-computer interaction with a focus certificate on accessibility, that you would also be taking part then in a certification process as part of that. So yes, we are looking for all the reasons that they both already mentioned.
Well, that's great.
So
Excellent
thank
panel.
you all very much, Christopher.
Yeah. Thank you. So we had so much here, and there was so much to, we needed more time. Wonderful, wonderful panel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I want to thank everyone. We're at the very end of our event today. There's so many people to thank. I want to thank obviously G3ICT and the EJ Krause team. They have been a big part in pulling this event together. I want to bring up the slides right now. Sam, if you could help me out. And we want to make sure that people stay connected. We want to make sure that you know that you need to hold the date. We are having virtual and on-site. M-Enabling Summit is going to be October 4th through the 6th in DC. We'll have both, as I mentioned, virtual as well as on-site. So we're pretty excited about that. Next slide. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that Google has been such a, just an incredible source in pulling this together. So thank you, Google. And we have many other sponsors tied to this, as well as all virtual briefings that G3ICT and EJ Krause has pulled together. So these are just a few of them in regards to Nobility and PEAT and TDI and Faculty Center and so on. So many of those. And then especially I want to thank the team. What an amazing team that we have to pull this together. Just a lot going on, as you know, behind the scenes. And these are the faces that you're seeing on the slide that have been doing that. And then finally, I want to thank our accessibility team. Beth, thank you so much. Jessica, thank you so much. And thank all captionists. And everyone, have a great rest of the evening, afternoon, morning, and stay tuned and stay connected. We'll be having more virtual briefings as well as the October 4th M-Enabling Summit. Thank you very much. Thank you.